Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
As we look to the recent numbers, we're all concerned.
A new daily record, 425 cases of COVID-19 in BC. Also,
our processes run a little bit slower.
USA!
Still counting.
Thank you so much.
Why Joe Biden is on the brink of winning the U.S. presidency. And
they're going to Australia. They're making their way to Perth.
Heading home. Reuniting pets separated from their owners by COVID.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening. Another record-breaking day for the number of new COVID-19 cases in BC as the province surpasses 400 daily cases for the first time. Dr. Bonnie Henry is reporting 425 new cases of the virus, with the majority in the Fraser Health region once again. No new deaths to report overnight, but there are now 3,389 active cases of the disease in BC. 97 people are in hospital, including 24 patients in intensive care. More than 7,500 people are now under active monitoring by public health workers because of COVID-19 exposure. Now, as we mentioned, one region in particular continues to eclipse the others in terms of case counts. Let's bring in our Tanya Fletcher for more on today's update. So, Tanya, why is Fraser Health continuing to drive the bulk of BC's caseload?
Yeah, that's where 65% of today's new cases were recorded, and Dr. Bonnie Henry attributes it to a combination of factors. So she says it's a region that has a higher concentration of risky environments like correctional facilities and food processing plants. And a large proportion of essential workers also live in that area, but it's also been a hotbed of social events, even smaller ones, that are fueling the spread. She also pointed out not just in the Fraser Valley, but she pointed to an outbreak at a church in the interior that was also respecting the 50-person limit, but was still a breeding ground for the virus.
They had a lot of singing, and some people at that church service became ill, even though they were ostensibly trying to keep their distance and making sure that they weren't having tea afterwards and things like that. But it can happen.
She says that's why it's so critical for people to limit social contacts, but she did not go so far as to suggest she'd further restrict the order on gathering sizes.
Yeah, and Tanya, watching her briefing today, Dr. Henry also had some pretty strong language for certain activities in certain places that are not safe right now.
When talking about risky activities, she singled out spin classes in particular.
Right now, spin classes in Metro Vancouver are dangerous. We should not be doing those things. We need to find other ways, I should say indoor spin classes. The outdoor ones, we haven't seen transmission. But those are the types of situations where we need to pay attention to how much virus is in the community and what types of risks we're potentially exposing ourselves to.
And she says group activities indoors will be of increasing concern as we head into winter and more of us transition from spending time outside to inside. Mike?
Fletcher reporting live tonight. Thanks, Tanya. And new data reveals just how many healthcare workers in BC have been infected with COVID-19. Of around 16,000 workers, 8.9%, that's about 1,400, have been infected with coronavirus. That information released following criticism that the information was being withheld as considered too sensitive to share. Advocates say this info shows how under stress the healthcare system is. Public Health wanted to clarify that exposure may not have happened in a healthcare setting and that it may have happened at home or out in the community. And new data on COVID-19 cases in our province, of course, came out today. As we just mentioned, the weekly release of cases by more detailed health regions, so sort of a deeper dive into that. And as mentioned earlier, the bulk of those cases coming out of the Fraser Health region. Our Justin McElroy joins us now live. And Justin, what stood out for you today?
The same thing that has been sticking out for many, many days in a row now, Mike. It's Fraser Valley, and specifically Fraser Valley South. So we got the last 2 weeks of COVID cases across BC and in sub-regions today. So that gives sort of a shorthand for active cases. And take a look at this chart. About 2,000 of those cases have been in Fraser Valley South. Now, that's the region between Delta and the Langley, so it includes Surrey and White Rock as well. Then you see about 1,000 cases for the rest of Fraser Valley, around 550 for the city of Vancouver as a whole, and look, just about 350 or so for the entire rest of the province. So it's incredibly concentrated in that one area of Fraser Valley, but the concerning thing is over the last 2 weeks, cases have gone up by about 75% in the city of Vancouver, up by about 90 or 100% in other areas of the Fraser Valley other than Fraser Valley South. The virus is spreading by quite a bit, but in Fraser Valley South, in the last month, more than 1 in 270 people have gotten it. It's extremely concerning transmission rates. The positivity rate continues to go up, and the province has not been able to tamp it down despite their focus.
And Justin, Tanya touched on this, but why are those specific areas of the Fraser Health region still hotspots?
Well, and like Tanya said, some of it we've heard Dr. Bonnie Henry talk about community events, religious events. Certainly that has something to do with it. But today she also gave another explanation. Have a listen.
That is where a large proportion of essential workers live. So people who have been going to work, whether that's in healthcare, whether that's working in poultry processing or vegetable and fruit growing or trucking, we have a large proportion of people who are living in that region.
And that is true to a certain extent, but it's not a 20-fold increase. And there's a 20-fold increase between Richmond and some parts of the Fraser Valley right now in terms of these cases. So certainly the message not getting across, or if it is, we're not seeing it in the testing rate so far. And if this continues, we'll continue to see more people ask if region-specific rules might be needed.
Okay, Justin, thanks for the breakdown. Justin McElroy reporting live tonight. BC real estate agents are being asked to temporarily stop holding open houses in an effort to curb the rise of COVID-19 cases. The recommendation comes from the regulatory agencies overseeing BC real estate professionals. The BC Real Estate Association is encouraging realtors to use virtual tools like video tours to protect clients until it's safe to hold open houses again.
This is a pan-provincial measure. It's not regional, even though the effects of the pandemic, the severity of the pandemic has varied quite widely from region to region within British Columbia. It's understood that our citizenry do travel across the province.
The request follows an order last week by health officials which limits the size of gatherings in private homes. New Westminster police have arrested and charged a resident and noted COVID-19 conspiracy theorist for breaking mandatory quarantine after returning from a Flat Earth conference in the U.S. 47-year-old Makan Singh Parhar is charged with 3 counts of contravening the Quarantine Act, which required him to self-isolate for 14 days after re-entering Canada. Police say they've been investigating Parhar since late October. He was reminded of the law around self-isolation and issued a violation ticket, but continued to leave his home. And on Monday night, he was arrested.
He was to remain self-isolated in his home for a period of 14 days. It's clear, after posting some videos on YouTube, that he chose to violate that, where he repeatedly went out into the public, putting others at risk.
And U.S. police say they take these violations very seriously. Parhar is being held in custody on the order of a judge. Anyone who has concerns for the safety of others and suspects a traveler of violating the Quarantine Act is asked to contact police. The family of a 15-year-old boy is asking for your help tonight to find their son. Nolan Gaudron was last seen outside a Coquitlam Mental Health Center in October. As our John Hernandez reports tonight, his parents are now offering a reward for information on where he might be.
I'm worried that I'll never see him again.
Jim Timmons has been living out of his car for days, and he's prepared to keep doing it for as long as it takes.
So I want to put money in the gas tank rather than paying, rents and stuff. We have a limited budget. I don't know how long this is going to happen. It might continue for quite a while.
He's been scouring Metro Vancouver in search of his 15-year-old son, Nolan Gaudron, who went missing almost 2 weeks ago.
Talking to people everywhere, store owners, anyone, city officials working the streets, taxi drivers, anybody that will listen to me.
Gaudron is between 5'6" and 5'8". He has wavy brown hair and brown eyes. The teen has struggled with mental health, a battle that's weighed heavily on his family.
It's heart-wrenching to watch it and have no power or control over the outcome.
Gaudron is a patient at this youth psychiatric center on the Riverview lands. He fled on October 24th while out for a walk with staff. His mother, Fidelia, fears her son's condition is only getting worse.
I'm scared to death. I'm scared to death. He needs to be found. He's off his medication. He's been off the medication now for 13 days. He's going to rapidly deteriorate.
Coquitlam police say they've followed up on several tips, but so far, nothing. Hospital officials say they're working closely with RCMP. Frustrations mounting over the lack of results.
They seem to treat it like it's just an ordinary runaway child and there's no pressing matter here. I've asked them to expand their alert to Alberta. I've asked them to search the Fraser River.
A parent's nightmare worsening day by day.
I want him back. I want him back.
The biggest fear in my mind is that he's suffering. I'm more worried about him suffering than finding him dead.
Gaudron's family is offering a $10,000 reward to anyone who might help find their son. The teen could be a risk to himself or the public, and RCMP say not to approach him. Anyone with information is asked to contact police. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
A former RCMP officer who was in charge of the illegal gaming task force back in 2009 says he tried to meet with BC's gaming minister, Rich Coleman, about money laundering, but was told by the then Solicitor General, Cash Heed, they were already aware of the problem.
And he said to me, in effect, that is what's going on, Fred, but I can't say that publicly. You know, it's all about the money. He did refer to Mr. Coleman as being largely responsible for this, along with senior Mounties who were complicit.
Former Mountie Fred Pinnock testified at the inquiry into money laundering today. He says he tried many times to meet with Coleman about what was going on in BC's casinos. The former minister was dismissive. Coleman disbanded Pinnock's task force that same year. BC government launched the inquiry after reports outlined how illegal cash was helping to fuel the real estate, luxury car, and gambling sectors in our province. A transit police officer is in hospital tonight after being seriously injured in a fiery crash in Surrey. Officers responded to reports of a collision near 128th Street and 93 Avenue just after 11 last night. The injured officer was responding to an emergency incident when their unmarked police SUV collided with a sedan. The two vehicles had crashed into a fence and into the backyard of a home. RCMP are also thanking bystanders for rushing to help the officer out of the SUV, which had caught fire.
Surrey RCMP Traffic Services Unit is investigating the collision, and they're going to be working to determine the sequence of events that led up to the collision.
It's not clear if the transit police officer's injuries were caused by the crash impact or by the fire. The driver of the sedan has minor injuries. An investigation into a crane collapse at the Port of Vancouver is raising safety concerns over the size of large container ships. The Transportation Safety Board released its report into an accident early last year that saw a crane collapse onto a container ship. It happened on January 28th of last year. The investigation found a pilot's error caused the crash. The two tugs assisting were inadvertently given opposite commands, and the vessel's stern hit the berth. The TSB says the size of the large vessel meant there was a low tolerance for error. It says container ships have increased in size over the last 10 years, and the board is concerned that soon the size of incoming vessels may exceed the port's capacity to accommodate them safely. Well, today, police in Victoria announced an October arrest of a man and the seizure of 1 kilogram of high-concentration fentanyl with a street value of more than $1 million. The arrest happened in the 0 block of Dallas Road on October 21st. It was part of a project targeting organized crime in Victoria. The months-long investigation identified a supply chain of rare, high-concentration fentanyl being trafficked around the area. Health Canada confirmed the concentration was 90% fentanyl, while typical samples average 10%. Police say that was enough fentanyl to supply almost 500,000 lethal doses.
Fentanyl on its own is responsible for 80% of the deaths associated with overdose. So this is a very serious situation with a very toxic drug supply, and it's translated into, so far this year, 91 deaths in Victoria, which is far in excess of what we saw last year.
Police said a man arrested will face charges of drug trafficking. Similar charges will also be recommended for 2 men from Surrey and a man and woman from Vancouver. And a toxic drug alert for Victoria is now being extended for a second week. Well, despite the canceling of the annual Remembrance Day service at City Park in Kelowna, there is another way for people to honor veterans and those who have died at war. The Field of Crosses has been set up in the park near the cenotaph. 240 white crosses, each displaying the name of a fallen soldier from Kelowna, along with their age, rank, and date of death. The organizer of the display says it allows people to reflect and remember those who have died and fought for our freedoms.
It's so meaningful for the families to come and see this, but also we have found that family members of fallen meet other family members of fallen here who they may not even know live in Kelowna now. So it gives people an opportunity to connect with other people who have family members who died during the wars and who can now see their names on the crosses.
And she says this year they will light red candles at the base of each cross on November 10th. Our first check of the forecast now. Johanna Wagstaffe is here. A decent night. Looks like we finally dispatched with all this precip.
It has all been dispatched south of the border. In fact, rain falling heavily in through Washington state right now. That is our atmospheric river departed, and we're left with this cool, clear, and breezy air mass that will stick around through the weekend. Let me show you the current temperatures because it is quite brisk after yesterday hitting the high mid-teens, I should say, across the south coast. We are now just down to a 7 for YVR, and as we head into the forecast over the next couple of days, temperatures will actually be dropping to the sub-0 range. So get used to some chilly days ahead, even though the sun will be shining. I've got lots of sun in the forecast. The skies that we see right now will continue to remain clear through the overnight. Temperatures dropping a couple more degrees down to a 5 and then back up to I think a 9 for Metro Vancouver tomorrow. Lots of sunshine through our Friday, and then as we head into Saturday and Sunday, even more sunshine, but even cooler temperatures. I will break down the long-range forecast, but I should mention we were dealing with that storm in through northern BC. That has also moved off, so wind warnings have ended for the coastal areas. And Peace Region, just a couple more centimeters for you tonight. That will be tracking across to the Rockies as well, and I've got lots more to say about a storm east of the Rockies as well. But Mike, I'm really interested in this next story because at the best of times, traveling with a pet on a plane can be challenging. And I should know because I took my 100-pound dog on a plane to visit my in-laws in Ontario a couple years ago. They loved it. So during a global pandemic, could be downright impossible.
Yes, it can be a challenge, but a Richmond business has come up with a solution. You might even call it a repatriation. Here's Deb Goebel.
Gypsy. Gypsy was all set to fly home to Australia last March, but then came COVID. Her owner was able to get a flight home, but Gypsy got stuck in Canada.
Transporting animals is very challenging. A lot of the air routes that we would normally use to transport animals have closed down. So we've been having to find alternate ways of getting animals to their destination, to their families overseas.
It's taken months to arrange, but finally she's going home. One of 69 pets on a charter to Melbourne.
Out of the 69, we have 40 dogs, and the balance are cats.
No human passengers on this flight. It's canine and feline only. A charter was the only way to get them to Australia.
Because they called an embargo on any live animals leaving Canada, the flights were canceled.
But it's not cheap. On top of paying for the plane ride, there's also the cost of vet care and tests and paperwork and then 10 days of quarantine once they arrive in Melbourne. For some, it will cost more than $10,000, but worth every penny, says Donnie Saunders.
Because they are our joy, you know, they're pure love.
Which is why a few humans are a little anxious.
Very nervous, like overwhelmed, like so many emotions.
Each pet will get their own crate and their own ice block and some comfy padding. Most will probably sleep once the flight gets underway.
You can catch me crying later when I drop her off for good.
Gina Wong's husband has already moved to Australia. She and Cora are meeting him there. It's taken more than 3 months to get this charter organized, but unlike flights scheduled for humans, there will be no last-minute flight cancellations.
The aircraft is on its way from Toronto, I'm sure, and we've been communicating with Air Canada, and right now everything is a go, so we see no delays.
Deborah Goebel, CBC News, Richmond.
And their flight leaves Vancouver a little bit later tonight. Well, a reminder, you can also watch this newscast live on the free CBC Gem app. CBC Vancouver is also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Well, the nail biter in the United States continues with the races in 4 key states only getting closer at this hour. Why all this might be in Joe Biden's favor next. And thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream tonight. Well, the COVID-19 pandemic has put a damper on many events, but a 92-year-old veteran in Toronto has taken some steps to ensure some Remembrance Day commemorations go ahead. As Natalie Collada reports, he's helping a veterans center plan a unique and safe event.
We can all learn a thing or two about strength and resilience from Richard Ratcliffe.
I think it's really innovative, and I think people are really going to be impressed when they see it. Our veterans will see it in their rooms and in their lounges.
The 92-year-old Korean War veteran helped adapt this year's Remembrance Day ceremony at Sunnybrook's Veterans Center.
Well, I get very emotional about this, but we worked hard. I'm part of the committee that worked on what we were going to do it because we couldn't do the big thing. And I think the program that we have come up with is really almost superior to the one I've witnessed here in the 5 years I've been here.
Pipers, a fly-past video-recorded ceremonies to share within the facility and with family across the country, as well as the public, will be part of this year's pandemic-adapted ceremony. So will the center's Raise the Flag operation. But instead of donors planting their flags on the lawn, center staff and military members will do it for them.
In the middle of a pandemic, we want to make sure that our veterans realize that they have not been forgotten, that their sacrifice for Canada is remembered even in difficult times for Canada.
Sunnybrook Military Hospital, which will be one of the world's great hospitals.
Sunnybrook's history with the military dates back to the 1940s. It began as a military hospital, now home to 375 veterans like Ratcliffe.
When people say, what do you think, what goes through your mind on Remembrance Day? And I always say, it's the camaraderie that we all had with our fellow servicemen who had put their lives on the line and developed a great spirit of brotherhood and sisterhood, I guess, on the front line, and we've never forgotten them.
Even during a pandemic. Natalie Collada, CBC News, Toronto.
Very nice. Okay, back in just a few seconds. Big news from the United States tonight, of course. We're all keeping a watch on the U.S. presidential election results. Boy, there's some tight races in still a few states, and we got a few updates for you. So just stay with us for a couple of seconds, and we'll have all the latest coming up. Well, all eyes are still on a few key U.S. states again tonight as the world waits to see who American voters have chosen as their next president. Our Dan Burra joins us now live with the latest on these races. So, Dan, first of all, remind us what the vote count is right now.
Same as last night, Mike. Democrat Joe Biden has 253 Electoral College votes. Republican President Donald Trump is at 214. And the same 4 states are still counting. Let's start in Pennsylvania, right up here. 20 electoral college votes that are up for grabs, still incredibly close. Trump is ahead slightly, 49.8%. Joe Biden at 49.1%. Donald Trump at 49.8%. About 90% of ballots counted. If Biden takes the state, he takes the presidency with more than the 270 electoral college votes required. The Trump campaign has launched lawsuits over claims of a lack of access to ballot counting. The state's Secretary of State says she was unaware of any new allegations of voter fraud, and the overwhelming majority of ballots will be counted by tomorrow. Let's go to the South now, to Georgia. There are 16 electoral college votes up for grabs. This is statistically tied. 49.4% for Joe Biden, the same for Donald Trump. About 99% of expected votes counted. Biden has eaten into Trump's lead here. CNN reporting there are now less than 2,500 votes separating them right now. Today, a judge threw out a Trump campaign lawsuit that raised concerns about 53 absentee ballots that poll observers claimed were not part of an original batch of ballots, but county elections officials testified that all 53 had been received on time. Over to the Southwest now. Arizona, right over here. 11 votes up for grabs. Joe Biden has maintained a relatively comfortable lead, though slim, 50.1%. Donald Trump at 48.5%. Expected vote count at about 90%. This afternoon, state officials said about just under 500,000 votes still have to be counted. So we wait, see what Arizona does. And finally, just to the west in Nevada, 6 electoral college votes up for grabs. Biden slightly ahead at 49.4%. Donald Trump at 48.5%. Expected vote count 84%. Now, a former Republican Attorney General says a lawsuit would be filed here to stop the counting of what they call improper votes. Today, election officials said they're unaware of any improper ballots being processed. They say the count is slow because of a huge number of mail-in ballots, and the U.S. Postal Service is going to keep delivering ballots postmarked on or before November 3rd, the day of the election, through next week. President Trump has claimed, without evidence, that Democrats are trying to steal the election. Joe Biden has called for calm. So we keep waiting as they keep counting, and that is my best John King impression for now. Mike.
Well done. You have a magic wall, too.
Indeed.
All right, thanks very much. And certainly the latest vote counts have Joe Biden sounding pretty optimistic tonight, and it seems to have Donald Trump preparing for a long legal fight. His supporters, too. The CBC's Rafi Boudjikanian reports.
With the vote count dragging on and a final verdict in the presidential race still up in the air, both candidates addressed the American public today. Democrat Joe Biden sounding increasingly optimistic.
We continue to feel very good about where things stand. We have no doubt that when the count is finished, Senator Harris and I will be declared the winners.
But President Donald Trump at the White House was defiant and listed sweeping, unsubstantiated allegations of fraud and corruption.
This is a case where they're trying to steal an election. They're trying to rig an election, and we can't let that happen.
Such claims were also seen in the president's social media posts earlier today. Any vote that came in after Election Day will not be counted, he wrote, and stop the fraud. Twitter itself flagging them as false or misleading information. All the tension spilling out to the streets of several cities where vote counting remains underway, and in the courts where Trump's legal team has launched multiple lawsuits. In some states, arguing for the continuing of counting where he may eke out a win. In others, where the president may be in trouble, demanding counting be stopped because of fraud. Accusations election officials roundly deny.
All these things are tracked. Our voting systems and our databases make sure that no voter can cast more than one vote.
But no matter the vote results from states that haven't finished counting, the final outcome may be days or weeks away. The president himself vowing, quote, a tremendous amount of litigation. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Washington.
Okay, to Arizona now, where, as Dan mentioned, Joe Biden is still hanging on to a narrowing lead there. David Common is in Phoenix tonight, where he has the story on the situation there.
The tranquility of the desert morning could not be more stark from last night. Trump supporters, some armed, protesting outside this vote counting center.
America will not fall to communism and socialism.
They allege fraud and voter suppression, demanding entry to see the count themselves. Sheriff's deputies blocking them. Inside, the slow process of counting continued. Joe Biden starting today with a slight lead, though with nearly 450,000 ballots still to count statewide this morning. Machines in this center could handle just 8,000 an hour.
I'm talking about bona fide voter fraud.
Meanwhile, outside, protesters returned confronting election workers.
Who knows if somebody voted 10 times, 2 times?
How can they vote 10 times? How can they get 10 ballots?
I don't know.
I don't know.
The guns returned too, all legal here.
You're not worried about division?
It's long overdue, another civil war in this country, in all honesty.
In neighboring Nevada, also razor close in the count, Trump's team launched legal action.
It is unacceptable in this country to have illegal votes counted, and that is what's happening in the state of Nevada.
They allege dead people were counted as voting and parroting the president that Republican votes were dismissed. Back in Phoenix, Democrat Alexandra Cortez made a plea.
We need to stand together, and whether one or the other wins, we have to be a nation.
The CBC's David Common reporting tonight from Phoenix, Arizona. And in states where counting is still going on, officials offered some explanations for the delay, and they talked about their concerns for the workers doing the ballot counting. Here, have a listen now to the representatives from Georgia and Nevada on that.
I think it's important for the entire country to understand that mail ballots on this scale is very new to the state of Nevada. We made a decision here to provide as much access as we possibly could as a result of the pandemic, and so our processes run a little bit slower. We also have to make sure that our data is being updated because we need to prevent people from voting twice in the system.
This is going to be an extremely close margin, especially in the presidential election, and we anticipate every one of those UACAVA and curable ballots and provisionals may come into account in that. So having a final one, it may take a minute.
I can tell you that my wife and my mother are very concerned for me, but we have security here. We have law enforcement who are protecting us. I am concerned for the safety of my staff. We're putting measures into place to make sure that we have the security that's necessary.
These are 159 elections directors and employees who are here to do the job of protecting democracy. When you go to talk to them, they think about that. They think about the votes of every person in this room and around the country. These are people who are not involved in voter fraud. These people are not involved in voter suppression.
All right, at 6:33, there is a live shot of one of the ballot counting facilities in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania tonight. Ballots still being counted, of course. The race there Getting tighter and tighter. Right now, Trump leading Biden by just 50,000 votes, and there's still about 6% of the ballots still to come. And stay with us tonight. We have more news ahead, including the latest on the coronavirus from around the world and our country. It's another lockdown for England amid a dramatic rise in COVID cases, while officials there are saying it won't last long this time.
A beautiful body like this does not come easy. It comes from grueling daily workouts and a total commitment to sculpting and toning every muscle in the body. Holly Buss is a 24-year-old Winnipegger who has dedicated the last 2 years of her life to building her 5-foot 4-inch frame. It has changed her life. She has given up junk food. She has given up her job as an X-ray technician. She now works in Gold's Gym, where she works out daily. Even her fiancé is a bodybuilder. He acts as her trainer. Any free time she may have, she reads about other bodybuilders. It is a single-minded dedication that has taken over her life. But it's worked. After 2 short years, Holly has become the Canadian amateur lightweight bodybuilding champion. It did not come easy.
I really didn't expect to come this far. I really just expected to get myself in shape. But the more I went in there, the more I liked it. I liked doing heavy weights and seeing how far I could push myself. And then finally I thought, well, gee, you know, you've worked out every day for a year. Why not just see what competition's all about? You have more confidence in yourself. And I never ever pictured myself being able to get up on that stage for a minute and a half and do something in front of people. And now I enjoy it so much that it's become more of a pleasure to even sit down like this and talk to people and be on camera and stuff. It's not frightening anymore. I enjoy it. I really feel comfortable with it.
Holly, how do you respond to somebody who says that is not feminine? Looking at a bodybuilder.
I would tell them to go and see a competition. And I would ask them what they think of me. If they were sitting with me or they were talking to me, I would ask them if they think that I'm not feminine. I'd come right out and ask. If they said, no, I don't know what I do, I'd probably turn around and walk away and go.
Body language. Body language. Body language.
Our top story tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
When it comes to house parties and gatherings, the message is simple. Don't throw them. Don't go to them. When it comes to house parties, we should all just say no.
As COVID-19 cases explode in our province, BC health officials are once again pleading with people to keep gatherings small and follow health orders and guidelines. A record daily total of 425 cases is being reported today, with more than 60% once again in the Fraser Health region. There were no new deaths, 97 people are in hospital, 24 in intensive care. And the second wave of the pandemic has brought Canada to an abysmal new place. There are now more than 250,000 cases of COVID-19 infection nationwide. The actual number is 250,933 13 cases. More than 60% of the country's population lives in Ontario and Quebec, and that's where the highest infection numbers are coming from. More than 1,100 new infections in Quebec today, nearly 1,000 more from Ontario. The numbers in Manitoba and Alberta are disproportionately high for their population sizes. The virus has now claimed the lives of 10,381 people in Canada. And as said, in Manitoba, cases continue to surge. 427 new cases today, about the same as us here in BC. And in care homes province-wide, the problem is particularly grave. There are now outbreaks at 22 personal care homes in that province, with the province calling for the Red Cross to come in and help. Many families with loved ones say it's too little too late. And as Jill Coborough reports, one family is calling for military intervention.
This here would have been my sister's room.
Jim Ottenbright thought he was helping his sister when he moved her out of Parkview Place and into Maple's personal care home this year. The 69-year-old was in a care home because of a head injury.
Felt so great when I got her out of Parkview, especially after hearing what was happening at Parkview, and then there was nothing happening at the Maples. You know, and then subsequently a couple weeks later now everything's just fully exploding. It's everywhere.
Now both homes are at the center of Manitoba's biggest and deadliest COVID outbreaks and have been struggling to sustain staff levels, leading to big concerns with resident care and infection control. Ottenbright's sister Donna tested positive for the virus a week ago. The 69-year-old died early Wednesday morning.
Devastating. Devastating. There was just the fact that knowing that my sister was so alone, that there was no family involved.
Ottenbright says his family was never told she was gravely sick. They were stunned to learn she died. He wants answers about why no one called them and why she wasn't taken to hospital. He's considering legal action.
I'm beside myself. My sister passed away in the middle of the night in a dark room by herself. And nobody can tell me any different than that. So is this a humanitarian crisis? Yeah, it is.
Revera, the for-profit company that manages the care home, says it's bringing in the Red Cross to support staff with the delivery of meals, companionship, and keeping residents isolated. It's also hired agency nurses and security guards to help with staffing shortages as it works to contain the outbreak. Today, a Red Cross team was on site doing an assessment to firm up how they'll help. But with more than half of all residents inside Maple's care home infected by COVID-19, Ottenbright says support from the Red Cross is not enough.
Bring in the Army. Plain and simple. It's the only solution. They're trained to take care of this, and I don't know why they're waiting.
Ottenbright worries if government doesn't intervene further, more lives will be lost. He says his sister Donna, a mother and longtime Winnipeg taxi driver, should never have died alone. Jill Coborough, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Well, a second lockdown started in England today in an attempt to curb the COVID-19 outbreak. Authorities ordered all non-essential venues to close. That includes pubs, restaurants, hair salons, and many other businesses. The UK is one of the worst hit countries in the world. But as Dominic Volitis reports, the government insists the new restrictions won't be in place for long.
Central London last night, just hours before England's second national lockdown came into effect, and one last chance to get around in before the pubs close for a month.
It's got that kind of New Year's Eve, Christmas Eve atmosphere in the air, so it's a little bit, it feels nice, but at the same time it's a little bit bittersweet.
It's a bit hard because it's like home to celebrate. My birthday's coming up, like, is it cancelled? Yeah. We don't know, do you know what I mean?
When it comes to pub shutting, I think it's a great idea to curb the spread of coronavirus, but I do think it's sad for those whose jobs rely on the social aspect, and I think that might suffer.
By this morning, England was a much quieter place, with non-essential shops, pubs and gyms closed. People have been told to stay at home. Households are banned from mixing. Anyone caught breaking the rules could be fined up to $17,000.
The advice I've received suggests that 4 weeks is enough for these measures to make a real impact. So these rules will expire, and on the 2nd of December, we plan to move back to a tiered approach. There is light at the end of the tunnel.
Meanwhile, the Bank of England today announced a further $256 billion of support for the British economy, warning how tighter lockdown rules and Brexit uncertainty could lead to a slower and bumpier economic recovery. Dominic Velitis, CBC News, Bristol.
Well, it's a cry for help across and around the world. Why one little boy's parents are turning to the internet to try to find hope for their desperately sick son. 16 minutes in front of 7 o'clock on this Thursday evening, a live look at downtown Vancouver tonight. Well, after a supersized soaking on the south coast over the past several days, the rain has finally moved on, shaping up to be a great weekend. Johanna Wagstaffe has details next.
It's an iconic site in the heart of Antigonish. Inside those doors, St. Ninian's Cathedral is home to an important piece of art history, one that has been nearly wiped away after decades of renovations.
It's pretty exciting. You get to have your hands on somebody's painting who nobody has seen in its entirety since 1937.
These blank walls and columns are home to a mural by Ozias Leduc. Gallinger calls him Canada's Michelangelo. In 1902, he painted this church from floor to ceiling. St. Ninian's should look completely different.
The columns are actually painted marble, so they're all marbleized. On the outside aisles, the Stations of the Cross are actually all painted by Ozias Leduc, and there are actual stencils that go all the way up the wall.
Over the years, most of Leduc's work has been covered up, leaving just a few images behind. They became known as the Floating Saints. But a steam leak in the building put them in danger. The 7 layers of paint and plaster are literally peeling away, taking the Leduc with them.
We decided that we would attempt to restore at least some of his work.
That's why Michelle Gallinger is here with her team, spending more than 9 hours a day pressed up against the ceilings of St. Ninian's. They're tasked with saving the saints. The first step is trying to piece them back together.
So we actually have to glue it all back down using steam irons and adhesive and hot guns or hot irons.
Then they use cotton swabs with solvent to erase the layers, uncovering the masterpiece underneath. They can even see Leduc's original brush strokes.
And when you put the varnish back on, this is what it starts to look like. So you get to see all the beautiful colors that Leduc used in his paintings, particularly. There's blue in the eyes. It's amazing transformation, isn't it?
But those white spots you see, those are the bits they didn't get to in time. They flaked away with all that peeling paint. Gallinger's team has to fill in the blanks. Slowly, carefully, they use their own brushes to restore the paintings. Right now, the team is working on 2 angels who haven't been seen since 1957. They're also focused on Saints Matthias and Peter, who were completely covered up. But all this beauty comes with a hefty price tag. It costs $40,000 per saint. Every time the church raises enough money to finish 2, they call Gallinger back to Antigonish. All of it has happened through anonymous donations.
People come up to me and say, I want to give money to help with this, but I don't want my name to be known.
So it is the community and people who have recognized how important these paintings are.
They still need to raise about $300,000 more to finish the last 7 saints. They figure that could take several more years. But when it's done, they hope everyone will come see the hidden treasure that is finally being revealed. Carolyn Ray, CBC News, Antigonish.
The Market Report is brought to you by Fortis BC. We've got even bigger rebates.
Rebate?
Whoa! On select high-efficiency equipment for business, but only for a limited time.
All right, time for a check of the forecast. Johanna is back. Boy, the rain was kind of relentless for the past few days, but it's made its way out.
Yeah, just in time. It's sort of the week that felt like it was a week on Tuesday long. So we're getting to the weekend, and I'm so pleased when the nice weather does line up for the weekend. Sort of a repeat of last weekend, clearing out behind me right now. Let me show you the big temperatures across the country. A quick look at what's going on from coast to coast. Mild in through most of Canada, 10 in Regina right now, 15 for Toronto, 13 in through Halifax. Big storm getting set to move across the prairies tomorrow night. We'll talk more about that in a minute. 6 in Kelowna right now. There's that low pressure system sinking south of us. Earlier models this week had it sort of skimming us for some showers tomorrow morning, but I think most of it will stay south. It is bringing some evening cloud to Victoria, but most of the storm well south of the border. And as I take you through the forecast, generally calming conditions for most of BC, clearing skies into the Peace region after a couple more centimeters tonight, and a few showers skimming high to Guay late tomorrow will clear up quite quickly. So almost everyone in BC getting to share in a bit of a calmer weekend. Just keep your eye out on the east of the Rockies. Look at two systems converging over Edmonton down towards Medicine Hat. That's just the start of what will be a big weekend storm for the prairies. Could be talking sort of crippling conditions with blizzards and 60+ centimeters. I'll talk more about that tomorrow. Temperatures cooling down for us in the southern interior and the south coast. Look at that, dropping from double digits tomorrow. It'll be quite a drop for places like Kamloops and Kelowna to just highs of 3s and 4s for the southern and central interior. So that's the big cool down for Saturday. And we will notice that cool down in our overnight temperatures this weekend as well. So this air mass is a cold one. Our seasonals for this time of the year are still around 10 for afternoon highs and 4s for overnight. So we're getting below by a couple of degrees. There's that Friday temperature of 9. A little system might bring us some overnight cloud Friday into Saturday morning, but clearing out for Saturday afternoon, staying gorgeously sunny through Sunday. And then just like that, the week returns and the showers return. So I'm glad we got to line that one up, Mike.
Oh, well, good. For what we've endured for the last few days, we deserve a reward, so that's great.
We all deserve this reward, yes.
All right, thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Well, a Winnipeg family is in a life and death search. As Jonathan Ventura reports, they are desperately looking for an ethnically diverse stem cell donor to try to help save their baby boy.
At only 3 months old, Boston DeCastro has started his first round of chemotherapy as a temporary fix for his life-threatening illness.
He spiked a fever, his liver and spleen started to get really big, all of his blood counts dropped, and he was requiring multiple transfusions every day. They did a bone marrow biopsy and a spinal tap on him, and that's how they found out he was diagnosed with HLH.
The diagnosis of hemophagocytic lymphohistiocytosis is believed to be genetic, and doctors say the cure lies with someone he doesn't know. That's because the cure is a stem cell replacement, and finding a match is extremely difficult because Boston's dad is Filipino and his mom is white.
I'm just kindly begging anybody with a mixed race ethnicity to donate their stem cells to help my son survive, because the chemotherapy he's getting right now and the steroids is only a temporary fix. He needs the stem cell transplant really bad.
The family is pleading for more people of color to join the stem cell registry with the Canadian Blood Services.
The more people that sign up, the better the chance, not only for my son, but for others as well.
Sarah Jasmine with the Canadian Blood Services says that only 3.5% of people on the registry are from mixed backgrounds. She says joining the registry is extremely easy and takes just minutes.
We would mail you a cheek swab kit. So you would swab just the 4 corners of your cheeks, you send it back to us, and then you would sit in our database.
For now, Boston is doing better. The family is hopeful he will be released from the Children's Hospital soon and join his 2.5-year-old sister at home. But that won't stop their search for a stem cell donor.
So we're just begging the community, anybody who is half Filipino, half Caucasian, even if you're any other ethnic minority, just get on the stem cell registry. You could save a life, including our sons, and we would just be so appreciative.
Jonathan Ventura, CBC News, Winnipeg.
When the temperature drops, Elizabeth Niles and her husband usually head south for the winter. But this year, COVID-19 has changed their plans.
We've been going to Florida every year for the whole winter, playing golf. And, well, this year is different, so we bought a ski pass.
We should have really, much more people that will be coming back on skis.
Niles is part of a wave of retirees who are snapping up ski passes in the province right now. Here at Mont Saint Bruno, managers say snowbirds are a big reason why sales are up 3 times from the same week last year.
They're all excited. They didn't see snow a lot. We've been playing golf more. So that's a new group of people.
At our age, we have to be very careful with the COVID and all that, so we don't want to take any chances. So, but I'm looking forward to skiing, and I'm quite excited.
It's good news for the industry. The number of skiers on hills province-wide has remained stagnant at around 6 million per season for the last 6 years. Couture believes this winter is a golden opportunity to bring new people into the sport.
It's a movement because the option of doing some leisure or any kind of activities are limited. The hockey rings are closed, and people honestly they want to get outside, fresh air.
Provincial health restrictions could change before these ski hills open later this month, but those in red zones are preparing to operate without things like equipment rentals, dressing rooms, or eat-in restaurants. They're also hiring more staff so employees can work in bubbles and they won't have to shut down in case there is an outbreak.
I feel very, very secure, very secure.
Regardless of the restrictions, it promises to be a big year for skiing. That is as long as there's a lot of snow in the forecast. Douglas Gellivan, CBC News, St. Bruno.
It's really not just about showers. It's about connection, it's about dignity, it's about self-esteem. It's just really exciting when we hear private donors approach us with their own passion and their own story and reason for why they want to be involved. And it really speaks to the generosity of the folks in the city of Edmonton and the way that they see the value in providing dignity and respect to people regardless of circumstance.
Yeah, you'll feel good about yourself.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Catch the Vancouver Asian Film Festival, a celebration of diversity in film and the Asian diaspora. Enjoy Canadian and international films from the comfort of your home. Get your tickets at vaff.org. And CBC Vancouver returns as exclusive media sponsor of the Corleone Men's Choir. Don't miss their upcoming digital concert, Remembrance with Corleone, on November 10th. Learn more at corleone.org.
Okay, Joe, as you know, the weather can be pretty harsh, particularly in the winter in the Maritimes. Can beat things up quite a bit, and that's the case with a popular landmark there in the Maritimes, badly in need of a facelift.
That's right. The Big Potato is slowly crumbling into potato chip each year just outside of Fredericton.
Yes, the CBC's Shane Fowler dipped into this story with past and present owners of the New Brunswick roadside attraction.
It was built in 1969, so he'd be 51 this year. Oh, as you can see, there's a few cracks starting to form on the big man there. There's cracks on the legs. There's on the other side there, the ankle's pretty much gone. The concrete's chipped away. We're looking for somebody that can come in and basically patch up all the cracks and basically evaluate and see if there's any deeper issues. Just give them basically a facelift and touch them up a little.
It would have been 68, I think we were talking about it. I would have been
15 probably. We had a big sign out front here, Harvey's Vegetable Drive-In. They would phone and say, we missed your operation somehow. He was a flying instructor. He was teaching Winston Bronham to fly. They got talking. Winston had Animal Land in Sussex. He built same type of thing, cement figures. And we were going to put 2 corn cobs, one at each end, because we were pretty popular for corn. And then Dad said, well, our backbone of our business has always been potatoes. He said, yeah, that probably makes sense. He asked Bronham, he said, what can you build for $1,000? And that's what he built. It probably doubled our business within a year or 2.
Oh yeah, people stop in here every day taking pictures with them. It's not uncommon to see, well, in the summertime, it's probably every 10 minutes there's somebody taking pictures of them. You see people pull in here in springtime when we're getting fields planted, they'll just pull right in here, jump out of the car, take a couple pictures, and away they go.
Jump out of the car. That's what you do in New Brunswick. I go to New Brunswick, we do almost every summer, and I have not seen the big potato ever. I'll have to check it out next time.
I was just going to ask you if this was part of your annual visit. You've got to add it to the top of your list next time.
We'll add it to the list. Potato country up to the St. John River Valley there. Very nice. All right, thank you, Joe, and thank you for watching tonight. Just a reminder, you can always find our newscast online, cbc.ca/BC. Good night.